The blood-red sun hung low over the horizon as Virgil Keller rode into Marfa, Texas, his weathered face grim beneath the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat. The 5-year-old girl, slumped against his chest, whimpered softly, her small fingers clutching his worn leather vest. This wasn't how he'd planned to return to the town he'd left behind 3 years ago, bearing the daughter of his dead best friend and the weight of a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. "Almost there, Lily," he murmured, adjusting his hold on the child. "Just hold on a little longer." Marfa in 1878 was a different place than when he'd left. The railroad had come through, bringing with it a dusty prosperity that showed in the newly painted storefronts and the bustle of activity despite the approaching evening. Virgil guided his exhausted horse down the main street, aware of the curious glances thrown his way. He'd been gone long enough to be forgotten by most, but not so long that his face didn't stir recognition in some. "Mr. Virgil," Lily whispered, her voice small and broken, "I want my ma." The words twisted in his chest like a knife. "I know, little one. I know." What else could he say? How could he explain to a child that her mother lay buried beneath a crude wooden cross 100 miles back, victim of a fever that had taken half the small mining camp where Tom had tried to make their fortune? "Parker's boarding house still around?" Virgil asked a man lounging outside the general store. The man nodded toward the end of the street. "Same place. Hannah Parker still runs it too, though it's Hannah Ellis now." Virgil felt his heart skip at the name. Hannah Ellis. She'd married then. The thought shouldn't have bothered him. He'd been the one to leave, after all, but it did. He nudged his horse forward, pushing away memories of dark hair and laughing eyes. The boarding house stood, as he remembered, a 2-story white-clappered building with a wide porch and blue shutters. Hannah had always been proud of those shutters, had painted them herself when she'd taken over the place after her father died. Virgil dismounted carefully, cradling Lily against him as he tied his horse to the hitching post. "We'll get you something to eat and a warm bed," he told Lily, whose tears had started again, rolling silently down her dirt-streaked face. The journey had been hard on her, too hard for someone so small. Virgil climbed the steps, his spurs jingling softly. Before he could knock, the door swung open, and there she was. Hannah Ellis Parker, whatever name she went by now. Her chestnut hair was pinned back, a few strands escaping to frame her face. Her blue eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed slightly. "Virgil Keller," she said, her voice cool but not hostile. "Didn't think I'd see you again." "Hannah," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "Need a room, for me and the little one." Hannah's gaze shifted to Lily, and her expression softened immediately. "Who's this?" "Tom Bradley's girl. He's gone. So's her ma." Hannah didn't waste time with questions. She stepped aside, ushering them in. "Come on, then. Poor thing looks ready to drop." The interior was warm and smelled of fresh bread and clean linen. Virgil followed Hannah through the front parlor and up the stairs to a small but neat room with 2 beds. "This will do," he said, gently setting Lily down on one of the beds. The child curled into herself, clutching the small cloth doll that was her only possession. "She needs food and a bath," Hannah observed. "I've got stew on, and I can heat some water." She hesitated, then asked, "What happened, Virgil?" Virgil removed his hat, running a hand through his sun-bleached hair. "Tom went to try his luck in the silver mines down south, took his wife and Lily. Things were going all right until the fever hit. Sarah, that was his wife, she went first, then Tom." He lowered his voice. "Made me promise to bring Lily here. Said Marfa was the only real home they'd had." Hannah's face softened with sympathy. "And what are your plans now?" "Don't have any beyond getting her here safely." Virgil looked at Lily, who had fallen into an exhausted sleep. "Figure I'll stay until I'm sure she's settled somewhere good." "With who? She has no one here." Virgil had no answer for that. The truth was, he hadn't thought beyond fulfilling his promise to Tom. "I'll figure something out." Hannah studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll bring up some food and water. You both look like you could use it." Left alone with the sleeping child, Virgil moved to the window. Marfa spread out before him, the buildings golden in the last light of day. He'd never meant to come back here. Too many memories, too many regrets. And now, here he was, saddled with a responsibility he hadn't asked for, and facing the woman he'd once thought might be his future. When Hannah returned with a tray of food and a pitcher of water, Virgil roused Lily gently. "Time to eat something, little one." The child sat up, disoriented and tearful. "Where's Ma?" Virgil exchanged a pained look with Hannah. "Remember what we talked about, Lily? Your Ma and Pa have gone to heaven. They asked me to bring you somewhere safe." Lily's face crumpled. "But I want them to come back." Hannah set down the tray and moved to the bed, sitting beside Lily. With a tenderness that made Virgil's chest ache, she smoothed back the child's tangled hair. "I know it hurts, sweetheart. I lost my Ma when I was just a bit older than you," Hannah said softly. "Would you like some stew? It might make you feel a little better." Lily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I want my Ma." Her sobs grew louder, more desperate. Virgil stood helplessly, out of his depth with a grieving child, but Hannah seemed to know exactly what to do. She gathered Lily into her arms, holding her close. "Shh, little one," she murmured, and then to Virgil's surprise she began to hum. It was a hymn he recognized from Sunday services long ago, one his own mother had sung. "Amazing Grace." The melody filled the small room, sweet and comforting. Hannah rocked Lily gently as she hummed, and gradually the child's sobs quieted. She continued to hold her, humming softly, until Lily's breathing evened out in sleep once more. "You're good with her," Virgil observed quietly. Hannah carefully laid Lily back on the pillow. "I've had practice. My sister's children stay with me sometimes." She stood, smoothing down her apron. "You should eat. The bath for her can wait till morning." Virgil nodded, suddenly aware of his own exhaustion. "Thank you, Hannah." She paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about your friend." After she left, Virgil ate the stew mechanically, his mind too full for him to really taste it. When he finished, he checked on Lily, tucking the quilt around her small form. Then he stretched out on the other bed, not bothering to remove his boots. Sleep came swiftly, deep and dreamless. Morning brought sunshine streaming through the curtains and the sounds of a town already busy. Virgil woke to find Lily sitting up in bed, looking around with confusion in her eyes. "Morning, Lily," he said, forcing cheer into his voice. "Remember where we are?" "The lady who was singing," Lily said. "Where did she go?" "That's Miss Hannah. This is her house. We're staying here for a while." A soft knock came at the door, and Hannah entered with a breakfast tray and a small basin of steaming water. "Good morning," she said. "I've brought you both some breakfast, and I thought the little one might like to get cleaned up." Virgil noticed that Hannah looked different in the morning light. Her hair was freshly pinned, and she wore a simple blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes. She was as beautiful as he remembered, perhaps more so now with the added confidence of a woman who knew her own mind. "Thank you," he said, rising. "Lily, this is Miss Hannah. She's going to help you get cleaned up." Lily regarded Hannah solemnly for a moment, then asked, "Can you sing again?" Hannah smiled, a real smile that lit her entire face. "Of course I can, after you've had some breakfast." After they'd eaten, Hannah helped Lily with her bath while Virgil went to see to his horse. The stable boy who took charge of the animal looked at Virgil curiously. "You staying long, mister?" "Not sure yet," Virgil replied, handing over a few coins. "Mrs. Ellis runs a good place," the boy offered. "Best boarding house in town." Virgil paused. "Mrs. Ellis? Hannah married?" The boy shook his head. "Widowed. Mr. Ellis died in a cattle driving accident about 2 years back. They weren't married but a few months." The news hit Virgil like a physical blow. Hannah, married and widowed in the time he'd been gone. He wondered if she'd loved her husband, if she'd mourned him deeply. She'd shown no sign of grief, but Hannah had always been good at hiding her feelings. When he returned to the boarding house, he found Hannah in the kitchen, showing Lily how to roll out dough for biscuits. The child's face was clean, her hair neatly braided, and she wore a dress that was slightly too large for her, probably borrowed from one of Hannah's nieces. Mr. Virgil, Lily called, holding up flower-covered hands. I'm helping. I see that, Virgil said, smiling despite himself. It was the first time he'd seen anything close to happiness on Lily's face since he'd taken her from the mining camp. Hannah looked up, her cheeks flushed from the heat of the stove. We're making biscuits for lunch. Lily's quite the helper. Glad to see your spirits up, Virgil said. Listen, Hannah, I need to go into town. See if I can find work. Maybe talk to people about arrangements for Lily. Hannah's expression turned serious. What kind of arrangements? Virgil lowered his voice. She needs a family, someone who can raise her proper. That's not me. And where do you plan to find this family? Just hand her over to strangers? I was thinking maybe the church might know someone, or Virgil Keller, Hannah interrupted, her voice stern but quiet. That child has lost everything. Her mother, her father, her home. And now you want to pass her off to strangers? After you've brought her all this way? Virgil bristled. I kept my promise to Tom. I got her to safety, but I'm no father figure. I drift, Hannah, you know that. It's why I left. A flash of something hurt maybe crossed Hannah's face. Yes, I remember quite well why you left. But this isn't about you and me. It's about Lily. Virgil looked over at the child who was happily cutting shapes in the dough, unaware of their tense conversation. What would you have me do? Take her on the trail with me? That's no life for a little girl. Hannah was quiet for a moment, considering. Stay, she said finally. At least for a while. Give her time to adjust before making any decisions about her future. And then what? Then we'll figure it out. Together. Hannah's eyes held his, challenging and compassionate at once. You owe her that much, Virgil. And you owe it to Tom. Virgil wanted to argue, to explain that staying in one place for too long made him feel trapped, that he wasn't cut out for responsibility. But he couldn't deny the truth in Hannah's words. He'd made a promise to Tom, and it went beyond simply delivering Lily to Marfa. Fine, he conceded. I'll stay. For a while. Relief softened Hannah's features. Thank you. Now, why don't you go into town and see about that work? Lily and I have baking to finish. Marfa hadn't changed much at its core, Virgil discovered as he walked the familiar streets. New buildings had sprung up around the original settlement, but the heart of the town remained the same. The general store, the saloon, the blacksmith, all as he remembered. At the livery stable, he found the owner, Hank Wilson, shoeing a horse. Virgil Keller, Hank said, looking up from his work. Heard you were back in town. Staying this time, or just passing through? Staying for a bit, Virgil replied. Looking for work. Hank nodded thoughtfully. Could use some help, truth be told. Got more horses than I can handle since the railroad brought more folks to town. You always did have a way with the troublesome ones. By midday, Virgil had secured a job at the livery and found himself with a sense of purpose he hadn't expected. As he walked back to the boarding house, he contemplated what it would mean to stay in Marfa, to put down roots, even temporarily. The thought was both comforting and terrifying. He found Hannah in the front parlor, mending a shirt while Lily napped on a small sofa nearby. Got a job at Wilson's livery, Virgil told her, keeping his voice low. Starts tomorrow. Hannah looked pleased. That's good. Hank's fair and the work suits you, she set aside her mending. Lily's been asking about her parents all morning. It comes in waves, I think. She plays and seems fine, then suddenly remembers and gets upset again. What do you tell her? The truth, as gently as I can, that they loved her very much and didn't want to leave her, but sometimes God calls people home when we're not ready to say goodbye. Hannah's gaze drifted to the sleeping child. She cried for her mother again. I held her and hummed that hymn she seems to like. It calmed her down. Virgil felt a rush of gratitude. You're good to her, better than I know how to be. Hannah's eyes met his. You brought her to safety, Virgil. That counts for something. She hesitated, then asked, why did Tom send her here, specifically? Did he have family in Marfa? Virgil shook his head. No family that I know of, but they lived here for a time before heading south. He said Sarah was happy here, that it was the closest thing to a real home they'd had. He paused, remembering. Tom mentioned something about Sarah having a friend here, someone she trusted, but he was pretty far gone by then, and I couldn't get a name out of him. Well, it's a small town. If Sarah had a close friend here, we should be able to find them. Maybe they'd be willing to take Lily in. The thought of finding someone who would care for Lily brought both relief and an unexpected pang of loss to Virgil. He'd only been responsible for the child for a short time, but already he felt connected to her. We'll ask around, he agreed. In the meantime, I appreciate you letting us stay here. Hannah rose, gathering her mending. It's what neighbors do, she said simply. And speaking of neighbors, I should check on Mrs. Thornton across the way. Her arthritis has been acting up something fierce. Would you mind keeping an eye on Lily? I won't be long. Of course, Virgil said, though the thought of being left alone with the sleeping child made him nervous. What if she woke up crying for her mother again? What would he do? After Hannah left, Virgil sat in a chair opposite the sofa where Lily slept. She looked peaceful now, her small face relaxed in slumber, one arm wrapped around the cloth doll she refused to part with. Virgil wondered what would become of her. Who would raise her, teach her, protect her? The responsibility felt overwhelming. As if sensing his thoughts, Lily stirred, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment she looked confused, then her gaze found Virgil. Mr. Virgil, she said sleepily, where's the nice lady? Miss Hannah had to go check on a neighbor. She'll be back soon. Virgil leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Did you have a good nap? Lily nodded, sitting up and hugging her doll. I dreamed about Ma. She was singing to me, like Miss Hannah does. Virgil's throat tightened. Your Ma loved you very much, Lily. She'd be glad to know you're safe. Are you going to be my pa now? The directness of the question caught Virgil off guard. No, Lily. I'm not your pa. I was your pa's friend, and I promised him I'd take care of you. But who's going to be my pa and ma now? Her lower lip trembled. Virgil moved to sit beside her on the sofa. I don't know yet, little one. But I promise we'll find someone good to take care of you. Someone who'll love you just as much as your ma and pa did. I don't want new parents, Lily said, tears welling in her eyes. I want my real ones back. I know, Virgil said helplessly. I know you do. The front door opened and Hannah returned, her arms full of what looked like wild herbs and flowers. Seeing Lily awake and on the verge of tears, she quickly set her bundle down and came to the sofa. What's this? Tears after such a nice nap? She sat on Lily's other side, smoothing back a strand of hair that had escaped the girl's braid. Would you like to help me make a poultice for Mrs. Thornton? She has sore hands, and these flowers and herbs will help make them feel better. Distracted from her grief, Lily nodded, clearly intrigued by the colorful plants Hannah had brought. As Hannah led Lily to the kitchen, she cast a grateful look at Virgil over her shoulder. He marveled at how easily she diverted the child's sadness, how naturally she seemed to know what Lily needed. Days passed, falling into a pattern. Virgil worked at the livery. Coming home, and he found himself thinking of the boarding house as home to meals shared with Hannah, Lily, and the few other boarders. In the evenings, Hannah would read to Lily or teach her simple games, and sometimes Virgil would join in, surprising himself with how much he enjoyed these quiet domestic moments. Lily still had periods of intense grief, usually at night or when something reminded her of her parents. During these times, Hannah was unfailingly patient, holding the crying child and humming the hymn that seemed to comfort her most. Virgil began to recognize the tune, sometimes finding himself humming it under his breath as he worked. A week turned into 2, and Virgil made inquiries about Sarah Bradley's possible friend in Marfa. No one seemed to know of any special connection. If Sarah had had a close friend in town, that person either had moved on or wasn't coming forward. One evening, as Lily slept upstairs, Hannah and Virgil sat on the front porch. The night was cool, stars scattered like diamond dust across the black velvet sky. No luck finding Sarah's friend, Virgil said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. Hannah nodded, her profile illuminated by the soft glow from the parlor window. I've asked everyone I could think of. No one remembers Sarah having a particular friend here. Maybe Tom was confused at the end, or maybe the person moved away. Maybe. Hannah turned to look at him. What will you do if we can't find them? Virgil had been pondering this question himself. I don't know. The preacher's wife mentioned a couple over in Alpine who've been wanting a child. Said they're good people. And you'd just hand Lily over to them? Strangers in another town? What's the alternative, Hannah? I can't keep her. I'm not fit to raise a child. Hannah was quiet for a long moment. She's getting attached to you, you know, and to me. All the more reason to find her a permanent home sooner rather than later, before she gets too attached. And what about you? Are you getting too attached as well? Hannah's voice was soft, but her question cut to the heart of what Virgil had been avoiding. It doesn't matter what I feel, he said roughly. I'm not father material, never claimed to be. I've watched you with her, Virgil. You're gentler than you think, more patient. She trusts you. Virgil stared out at the darkened street, unable to meet Hannah's gaze. Trust can be misplaced. Is that what happened between us? Misplaced trust? There was no accusation in her voice, just a genuine question. Virgil looked at her then. In the dim light, she was beautiful, her eyes reflecting the stars above. You trusted me to stay. I couldn't. It wasn't about you, Hannah. It was never about you. Then what was it about? How could he explain the restlessness that had driven him all his life? The fear that settling down meant surrendering something essential about himself? I've never belonged anywhere, he said finally. Not really. My pa moved us around so much when I was a kid that I never learned how to put down roots. And after he died, I just kept moving. It's all I know. Hannah considered this. And now? You've been here almost 3 weeks. Longest you've ever stayed in one place? Close to it, Virgil admitted. But it's temporary. You know that. Does it have to be? The question hung between them, loaded with possibilities Virgil wasn't ready to consider. Before he could respond, a cry came from upstairs, Lily having another nightmare. Hannah rose immediately. I'll go to her. No, Virgil said, standing. Let me. You've done it every night. Hannah looked surprised but nodded. All right, if you're sure. Virgil found Lily sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face. Hey, little one, he said gently, sitting on the edge of her bed. Another bad dream? Lily nodded, hiccuping through her tears. I saw Ma, but she kept walking away and wouldn't look at me. Oh, Lily. Virgil hesitated, then opened his arms. The child climbed into his lap without hesitation, burying her face against his chest. Your Ma wouldn't walk away from you, not ever. She loved you more than anything in this world. Then why did she leave me? Lily's voice was muffled against his shirt. Virgil struggled for words. Sometimes people have to go, even when they don't want to. Your Ma and Pa didn't choose to leave you. If they could have stayed, they would have. Like you're going to leave? The question caught him off guard. What makes you say that? Lily pulled back to look at him, her small face serious in the moonlight streaming through the window. I heard you talking to Miss Hannah. You said you can't keep me. Guilt washed over Virgil. Lily, It's okay, she interrupted, with a wisdom beyond her years. Everybody leaves me. The simple statement, delivered with such resignation, broke something open in Virgil's chest. Before he could think about it, he pulled her close again, fiercely protective. I'm not leaving you, Lily, he promised. Not until we find you a good home with people who will love you forever. People who won't leave. Could I stay with you and Miss Hannah? I like it here. Virgil didn't know how to answer that. Instead, he began to rock her gently, and to his own surprise, found himself humming the hymn Hannah always sang. He didn't know all the words, but the melody came easily, comforting in its simplicity. Lily relaxed against him, her breathing gradually evening out as she drifted back to sleep. Even after she was fully asleep, Virgil continued to hold her, struck by how right it felt to comfort this small, orphaned child. When he finally laid her back on the bed and turned to leave, He found Hannah standing in the doorway, watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You heard," he said quietly as they moved into the hallway. Hannah nodded. "She wants to stay with us. She's just confused, looking for security." "Is that so wrong? To want security? To want a home?" Virgil ran a hand through his hair. "No, of course not. But I can't give her that, Hannah. You know I can't." "Can't or won't?" Hannah's voice was gentle, but the question stung nonetheless. "Both, maybe." Virgil sighed. "Look, I promised Tom I'd make sure Lily was taken care of. That doesn't mean I promised to do the caring myself." "Then what did it mean?" "It meant I'd get her somewhere safe. Find people who could raise her right." Hannah studied him for a long moment. "And if those people were right here in Marfa? If they were us?" Virgil stared at her, shocked. "Hannah, what are you saying?" "I'm saying the child needs a home and she's already found one. With us." "There is no us, Hannah." Pain flashed across her face. "That's not what I meant. I meant that I could take her in, raise her here. By yourself, a single woman running a boarding house. Why not? I've managed this place on my own for years. I have experience with children, and Lily already trusts me." Virgil couldn't argue with that. Hannah would make an excellent mother for Lily. But something about the idea of leaving them both behind made his chest ache. "If that's what you want to do," he said finally, "I won't stand in your way." Hannah's expression softened. "It's not about what I want, Virgil. It's about what's best for Lily." She hesitated, then added, "And maybe what's best for you too, if you'd let yourself see it." With that, she turned and went back downstairs, leaving Virgil alone with thoughts he wasn't ready to face. The next day was Sunday. Hannah insisted they all attend church, dressing Lily in a freshly pressed dress and tying ribbons in her hair. Virgil, who hadn't set foot in a church in years, felt uncomfortable in his best shirt, which wasn't saying much. "You look fine," Hannah assured him as they walked toward the white steepled building at the end of the main street. "Stop fidgeting." Lily skipped between them, holding their hands, seemingly happy for the first time since Virgil had known her. The sight of her, momentarily carefree, sent a warmth through him that was unfamiliar but not unwelcome. The church service was simpler than Virgil remembered, the preacher's message about forgiveness and new beginnings. Halfway through, the congregation sang "Amazing Grace," and Virgil found himself watching Hannah as she sang, her clear voice rising with the others. Lily leaned against Hannah's side, content and secure. After the service, they were approached by a middle-aged couple Virgil didn't recognize. "Hannah," the woman said warmly, "so good to see you. And who are these two?" Hannah made the introductions. "Clara, John, this is Virgil Keller, an old friend, and Lily Bradley. They're staying at the boarding house." Clara bent down to Lily's level. "What a pretty little girl you are. And how old are you?" "Lily?" "5," Lily answered shyly, pressing closer to Hannah. "What a perfect age," Clara said, smiling. "Old enough to be helpful, but young enough to still want cuddles." John, a tall man with kind eyes, looked at Virgil. "Keller, you're the one working for Hank Wilson now, aren't you? Heard you've got a way with horses." "That's right," Virgil confirmed. "We've got a mare that's giving us trouble. Won't let anyone near her since she foaled. I'd be grateful if you could take a look." "Be happy to," Virgil said, surprised at how easily he was falling into the rhythm of small-town life. As they walked back to the boarding house, Hannah explained that John and Clara Bennett owned a small ranch outside of town. "They're good people," she said, "lost their only son to typhoid a few years back. They've been trying to have another child," but she glanced at Lily, who was running ahead to pick wildflowers, and left the sentence unfinished. Virgil understood what she was implying. "You think they might be interested in taking Lily?" Hannah looked troubled. "Maybe. They certainly have the means and the love to give, but what? But I've been thinking about what I said last night, about raising Lily myself." Hannah's cheeks flushed slightly. "I meant it, Virgil. I already care for her deeply, and she seems to have attached herself to me." "And to me," Virgil admitted quietly. "Though God knows why." Hannah smiled at that. Children see things we don't sometimes. They recognize goodness where adults might miss it. There's not much good in me to recognize. That's not true. Hannah stopped walking, turning to face him fully. You're a better man than you give yourself credit for, Virgil Keller. You could have left Lily at any orphanage between here and the mining camp, but you brought her all this way because you promised your friend you would. That takes honor and kindness. Virgil wasn't used to such direct praise, especially from Hannah, whose good opinion had always mattered more than he cared to admit. Before he could respond, Lily came running back, her hands full of bluebonnets. "Look what I found," she exclaimed. "Can we put them in water when we get home?" Home. The word echoed in Virgil's mind as they continued walking. When had the boarding house become home to Lily? To him? That afternoon, Virgil rode out to the Bennett ranch to look at their troublesome mare. The work was a welcome distraction from his conflicted thoughts about Lily, Hannah, and his own future. The mare, a beautiful palomino, was indeed skittish, positioning herself between visitors in her foal with bared teeth and flattened ears. Virgil took his time, speaking softly and approaching indirectly, until eventually she allowed him to touch her neck, then her flank. By the end of the afternoon, he had managed to check her hooves and pronounce her healthy but protective. "That's remarkable," Clara said, watching from the corral fence. "No one's been able to get near her for weeks." "She just needs patience," Virgil explained, "and to know you respect her boundaries." Clara studied him with interest. "Hannah tells me the little girl staying with you lost her parents." Virgil nodded, suddenly wary. "That's right. Such a tragedy. She seems like a sweet child." "She is." Virgil busied himself with gathering his tools, unsure where the conversation was heading. "John and we've been praying for a child for years," Clara said gently. "After our David died, we thought maybe God would bless us with another. But it hasn't happened." Virgil looked up, meeting her gaze. "Hannah mentioned that. I'm sorry." "Don't be. We've made peace with it. But we've been thinking about taking in an orphan, giving a home to a child who needs one." She hesitated. "Like Lily, perhaps." There it was, the solution to Virgil's dilemma, presented neatly and tied with a bow. The Bennetts were good people, financially secure, with a comfortable home and obvious love to give, everything he'd been looking for on Lily's behalf. So why did the prospect of handing Lily over to them fill him with such dread? "It's something to consider," he said noncommittally. "But there are complications." Clara nodded understandingly. "Of course, it's a big decision. Just know that if it seems right, John and I would be honored to give Lily a home. We're not getting any younger, and this place could use a child's laughter again." Virgil promised to think about it, and rode back to town with his thoughts in turmoil. The Bennetts were the perfect solution. They could give Lily everything she needed: stability, love, a future. It was what he'd been looking for since he'd brought her to Marfa. But the thought of Lily living at the Bennett ranch, calling Clara Ma and John Pa, made his heart ache in a way he hadn't expected. And what about Hannah? She'd already expressed a desire to raise Lily herself. How would she feel about the Bennett's offer? When he returned to the boarding house, he found Hannah in the kitchen, preparing supper. Lily sat at the table, carefully setting out plates and forks under Hannah's guidance. "Mr. Virgil," Lily exclaimed when she saw him, "Miss Hannah is teaching me to set the table. I'm helping." "I see that," Virgil said, smiling despite his troubled thoughts. "You're doing a fine job." Hannah looked up from the stove, her face flushed from the heat. "How was the Bennett mare?" "Just being protective of her foal. Once she understood I wasn't a threat, she settled down." Virgil hung his hat on a peg by the door. "Clara mentioned they're interested in taking in an orphan." Hannah's hand stilled for a moment, then resumed stirring the pot. "Did she now?" "Specifically, she mentioned Lily." Hannah glanced at Lily, who was focused on arranging the forks just so, oblivious to the adults' conversation. "And what did you tell her?" "That it's complicated, that I'd think about it." Hannah nodded, her expression carefully neutral. "They would give her a good home." "The best," Virgil agreed. "But last night you said—" "I know what I said." Hannah moved the pot off the heat. "Lily, would you please go upstairs and wash your hands for supper? And tell the other boarders it'll be ready in 10 minutes." Once Lily had scampered off, Hannah turned to face Virgil fully. "I meant what I said about wanting to raise her myself, but I have to consider what's best for Lily, not what I want. And what's best for her. The Bennetts with their ranch and their means, or you with your boarding house and your single status." Even as he said the words, Virgil regretted them. Hurt flashed across Hannah's face. "My single status? Is that really what you think makes a good parent, Virgil? A wedding ring?" "No, that's not what I meant. I just meant—" "I know what you meant." Hannah's voice was controlled, but Virgil could hear the anger beneath it. "You meant that a child needs two parents, a mother and a father, and you're right, in an ideal world. But we don't live in an ideal world, do we? We live in a world where children lose their parents to fever and have to be raised by whoever is willing to love them." "Hannah, the Bennetts are good people. If you think they should raise Lily, then that's your decision to make. You're her guardian now, not me." With that, Hannah turned back to the stove, effectively ending the conversation. Virgil stood there for a moment, feeling as though he'd failed some test he hadn't known he was taking. Supper that evening was a subdued affair, at least for Virgil and Hannah. Lily, unaware of the tension between the adults, chattered happily about her day, the flowers she'd picked, and how Miss Hannah had shown her how to make biscuits all by myself. After the meal, when the other boarders had retired to their rooms and Lily was in bed, Virgil found Hannah on the front porch, staring out at the star-filled sky. "I'm sorry," he said, sitting beside her on the porch swing. "What I said earlier came out wrong." Hannah didn't look at him. "Did it, or did it come out exactly as you meant it?" Virgil sighed. "Maybe a bit of both. I do think a child benefits from having two parents, but I also know that a single parent who loves their child can do just as well. Better even than two who don't." "Like your father," Hannah said quietly. "He raised you alone after your mother died." Virgil nodded, surprised she remembered. "He did the best he could. We moved around a lot, and he was stern, but he loved me, made sure I knew right from wrong. And you turned out just fine." Hannah finally looked at him, her expression softening. "Virgil, I'm not trying to compete with the Bennetts. If you truly believe they're the best home for Lily, then I'll support that decision. I just want you to be sure." "That's just it," Virgil admitted. "I'm not sure. The Bennetts have everything to offer her: stability, means, two parents. But when I think about leaving her with them, about riding away and knowing I'll likely never see her again—" He trailed off, unable to articulate the sense of loss he already felt. "Then don't ride away," Hannah said simply. "What? Don't ride away. Stay in Marfa. You have a job you're good at. You could visit Lily at the Bennetts, be part of her life even if you're not raising her yourself." The suggestion was so unexpected that Virgil didn't know how to respond. Stay in Marfa? Permanently? The thought both terrified and attracted him. "I don't know if I can do that, Hannah. Because of your restless nature or because of me?" The directness of the question startled him. "What do you mean?" Hannah turned to face him fully, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "I mean, are you afraid to stay because you're afraid of what might happen between us? Again?" 3 years ago, Virgil and Hannah had been on the verge of something significant. There had been talk of marriage, of a future together. And then Virgil had panicked, convinced himself he wasn't cut out for settled life, and ridden away before dawn one morning, leaving only a hastily written note. "I hurt you," he said now, the admission painful but necessary. "I left without a proper goodbye. I wouldn't blame you if you never forgave me for that." "I was angry for a long time," Hannah acknowledged, hurt, confused. "But eventually, I realized you did what you thought you had to do. And maybe you were right to leave. I don't think either of us was ready then. And now? Are we ready now?" Hannah's smile was sad. "I don't know, Virgil. I've changed. You've changed. Life has a way of doing that to people." "You married," Virgil said. the words tasting strange on his tongue. I did. Daniel was a good man, kind, steady, the complete opposite of you in many ways. She looked away, her profile outlined against the night sky. I cared for him deeply, and when he died, I mourned him. But it wasn't what I felt for you. The admission hung between them, weighted with implications neither of them seemed ready to explore. Hannah, It's late, she interrupted, rising from the swing. And we both have early mornings. We should get some rest. As she turned to go inside, Virgil caught her hand. Hannah, wait. She paused, looking down at their joined hands. I don't know what the future holds, Virgil said quietly, for any of us. But I do know that having you in my life again, even for these few weeks, has meant more to me than I can say. Hannah squeezed his hand, then gently withdrew hers. Good night, Virgil. Sleep eluded Virgil that night. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with possibilities and fears. Stay in Marfa. Let the Bennetts raise Lily. Ask Hannah for a second chance. The decisions felt too big, too consequential. Toward dawn, he heard a soft cry from Lily's bed. Rising quietly, he went to her, finding her caught in another nightmare. Shh, little one, he murmured, sitting on the edge of her bed. I'm here. Lily's eyes fluttered open, confused at first, then focusing on Virgil. Mr. Virgil, she whispered, I had a bad dream. I know, but it's just a dream. You're safe. She nodded, sniffling. Will you sing to me, like Miss Hannah does? Virgil hesitated, then began to hum the familiar hymn. He wasn't much of a singer, but the melody was simple, and in the pre-dawn quiet, it seemed to fill the room with a gentle peace. As Lily's eyes drifted closed again, a certainty settled over Virgil. He couldn't leave this child, not now, not ever. Whether she lived with the Bennetts or with Hannah or somewhere else entirely, he needed to be part of her life. And that meant staying in Marfa. The realization should have terrified him. Instead, it brought a strange sense of peace. When morning came, Virgil found Hannah in the kitchen, already preparing breakfast for the boarders. We need to talk, he said without preamble. Hannah looked up, a hint of wariness in her eyes. All right? Not here, somewhere private. She nodded toward the back door. The garden. 10 minutes. I need to get the biscuits in the oven. Virgil waited impatiently in the small kitchen garden behind the boarding house. The morning was fresh and cool, the sun just beginning to warm the air. When Hannah finally joined him, wiping her hands on her apron, he didn't waste time. I'm staying in Marfa, he announced. Hannah's eyebrows rose. For how long? For good. Or at least, that's the plan. Virgil took a deep breath. Lily needs me, and I need her, though I didn't realize it until now. I don't know if the Bennetts are the right home for her or not, but what I do know is that I can't just hand her over and ride away. So what are you saying exactly? Hannah's voice was careful, measured. I'm saying I want to be part of Lily's life, permanently, whether that means visiting her at the Bennetts or, he paused, gathering his courage, or raising her myself, with help. What kind of help? Your help, Hannah, if you're willing. Virgil took a step closer to her. You said you wanted to raise her. I'm saying maybe we could raise her together. Hannah's eyes widened. Virgil Keller, if this is some roundabout way of proposing marriage, it's the strangest one I've ever heard. Despite the tension of the moment, Virgil found himself smiling. Maybe it is. I haven't quite figured it all out yet. But I know I want to be where Lily is, and I know I want to be where you are. The rest we can work out as we go. Hannah studied him, her expression a mix of hope and caution. That's not much of a plan for someone who's deciding to settle down. I know, but it's the most honest one I've got. Virgil reached for her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. Hannah, I left 3 years ago because I was afraid of failing you, afraid of being tied down, afraid of becoming my father, bitter and restless. But something's changed in me. Maybe it's Lily. Maybe it's seeing you again. Maybe it's just time. But I'm not afraid anymore." Hannah's eyes shone with unshed tears. "And what if you change your mind? What if the restlessness comes back?" "It probably will," Virgil admitted. "But that doesn't mean I have to act on it. That doesn't mean I have to leave. I can be restless and still choose to stay. For Lily. For you. If you'll have me." Hannah's free hand came up to touch his face, a gesture so tender it made his heart ache. "I think," she said softly, "we should talk to the Bennetts together, and to Lily. Before we make any decisions about the future." It wasn't quite the answer Virgil had been hoping for, but it wasn't a rejection either. "Together," he agreed. "That sounds like a good place to start." The meeting with the Bennetts took place the following day. Hannah closed the boarding house to other guests for the afternoon, and they gathered in the front parlor. Virgil, Hannah, Lily, and John and Clara Bennett. Lily, sensing the importance of the occasion, sat solemnly between Virgil and Hannah on the sofa, her small hands folded in her lap. "We wanted to talk to you about something important," Virgil began, looking at Lily. "About your future." Lily's brow furrowed. "Am I in trouble?" "No, sweetheart," Hannah assured her quickly. "Not at all. We just need to decide where you're going to live now since your ma and pa can't take care of you anymore." Lily looked confused. "I live here, with you and Mr. Virgil." The adults exchanged glances. "Yes, for now," Virgil said gently. "But we need to find you a permanent home, with a family who can raise you properly. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett here," Hannah added, "would very much like you to come live with them. They have a beautiful ranch with horses and cows. You'd have your own room, and plenty of space to play." Clara leaned forward, smiling warmly at Lily. "We would love to have you as our daughter, Lily. We've been hoping and praying for a little girl just like you." Lily regarded the Bennetts thoughtfully, then looked up at Virgil, her eyes wide and serious. "Would you and Miss Hannah come too?" The question caught Virgil off guard. "No, Lily. Miss Hannah and I would stay here in town, but we would visit you often." Lily's lower lip began to tremble. "I don't want to go without you. You promised you wouldn't leave me." Virgil felt a pang of guilt. "I did promise that, didn't I?" "Please don't make me go away," Lily whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I'll be good. I promise." Hannah put her arm around Lily, pulling her close. "Oh, sweetheart, it's not about being good. You are good. So good. It's about finding the best home for you." "This is my home," Lily insisted, burying her face against Hannah's side. "With you and Mr. Virgil." Clara Bennett watched the exchange with understanding in her eyes. "The child's been through so much already," she said softly. "Another change might be too difficult right now." John nodded in agreement. "Perhaps we're rushing things. Lily clearly feels safe here with both of you. What if—" Clara hesitated, then continued. "What if Lily stayed here for now? Got to know us gradually through visits. There's no need to make a final decision today." Virgil glanced at Hannah, who nodded slightly. "That sounds sensible," he said, "if you're willing to wait." "Of course," John assured him. "A child's well-being comes first. Always." After the Bennetts left, promising to invite Lily for a visit to the ranch soon, Hannah prepared a simple supper while Virgil sat with Lily in the parlor, reading her a story. "Mr. Virgil," Lily said when the story was finished, "are you and Miss Hannah going to get married?" Virgil nearly dropped the book. "What makes you ask that?" Lily shrugged. "Mrs. Wilson at church said you look at Miss Hannah the way her husband looks at her, and they're married." "Did she now?" Virgil cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Well, I don't know about that. Miss Hannah and I are old friends." "But do you love her? Ma said people get married when they love each other." "It's complicated, Lily." "Why? Don't you love her?" Children and their direct questions. Virgil shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, I do love Miss Hannah, very much. But sometimes love isn't enough." Lily considered this with a frown. "That doesn't make sense." "No, I suppose it doesn't. Virgil smiled wryly. Adults don't always make sense, Lily. That's something you'll learn as you grow up. If you love Miss Hannah and she loves you, you should get married. Then we could all live here together, and I wouldn't have to go to the ranch. Lily's logic was impeccable, if simplified. Is that what you want? For the three of us to be a family? Lily nodded emphatically. Yes. You could be my new pa, and Miss Hannah could be my new ma. The idea sent a surge of longing through Virgil so powerful it left him momentarily speechless. A family, with Hannah and Lily. It was something he'd never allowed himself to want, yet now it seemed like the only thing in the world that mattered. Lily, he said carefully, I can't promise that will happen, but I can promise that no matter what, I'll be here for you. And so will Miss Hannah. We both care for you very much. Lily seemed satisfied with this answer, at least for the moment. Can we have pie for dessert? Virgil laughed, relieved at the change of subject. We'll have to ask Miss Hannah about that. That night, after Lily was asleep, Virgil and Hannah sat on the porch swing again, the rhythmic creaking a counterpoint to the night sounds of Marfa. Lily asked if we're going to get married, Virgil said without preamble. Hannah's eyebrows rose. Did she? And what did you tell her? That it's complicated, which it is. Virgil looked at Hannah, his expression serious. But maybe it doesn't have to be. What do you mean? I mean, maybe Lily has the right idea. Maybe we should get married, raise her together, be a family. Hannah stared at him. Virgil Keller, that is the second time you've almost proposed to me in 2 days, and neither time have you actually asked the question. Virgil chuckled. Fair point. He slid off the swing and, to Hannah's evident surprise, went down on one knee before her. Hannah Ellis, I've loved you for longer than I care to admit. Even when I was too stubborn and too afraid to stay, I loved you. I think I've loved you since the day you painted those blue shutters and told me I was in your light. He took her hand. Will you marry me? Not just for Lily's sake, though she's part of it, but for us? For the life we could build together. Hannah's eyes filled with tears. Virgil, Before you answer, he interrupted, I need you to know something. I can't promise I'll never feel restless again. I can't promise I won't sometimes long for the open trail. But I can promise that I'll always come back to you. That whatever happens, you and Lily will be my home, my heart, my reason for being. A tear slipped down Hannah's cheek. That, she said softly, is the most beautiful thing anyone's ever said to me. Is that a yes? Hannah laughed through her tears. Yes, Virgil Keller. Yes, I will marry you. Virgil rose and pulled her to her feet into his arms. The kiss they shared was gentle at first, then deepened with years of longing finally acknowledged. When they broke apart, both were breathless. What about the Bennetts? Hannah asked, her head resting against Virgil's chest. They still want to adopt Lily. We'll talk to them, explain the situation. They seem like reasonable people, and they can still be part of Lily's life, just in a different way than they'd planned. Hannah nodded. We should tell Lily in the morning. About us, I mean. She'll be pleased. It was her idea, after all. Virgil smiled, running his fingers through Hannah's hair. Smart kid. She is, Hannah agreed. She's been through so much, but she still has such hope, such faith. Like you, Virgil said, tilting Hannah's face up to his. You never gave up hope, did you? Even after I left, even after you married someone else. I tried, Hannah admitted, but some part of me always believed you'd come back someday. I just never imagined it would be like this, with a child in tow and a proposal on my front porch. Life has a way of surprising us, Virgil said, thinking of the winding path that had led him back to Marfa, to Hannah, to the possibility of a family he'd never thought he'd have. The next morning, they told Lily over breakfast. Her reaction was everything they'd hoped for, pure joy. She threw her arms around both of them, laughing and crying at once. Now I don't have to go away, she exclaimed. Now we can all stay together forever. That's right, little one, Virgil said, his heart full. We'll be a family, you, me, and Miss Hannah. "Can I call you Pa?" Lily asked, her eyes wide and hopeful. "And Miss Hannah Ma?" Virgil glanced at Hannah, who nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'd be honored if you called me Pa," he told Lily. "Nothing would make me prouder." "And I would love to be your Ma," Hannah added, her voice thick with emotion. "If that's what you want." Lily's smile was answer enough. She climbed into Hannah's lap, wrapping her small arms around her neck. "I'm glad you held me when I was crying," she said, and sang to me. "My real Ma used to sing that song too." Hannah's eyes widened. "Amazing Grace? Your mother sang that to you?" Lily nodded. "Every night. She said her friend in Marfa taught it to her, her special friend who ran the pretty house with blue shutters." Virgil and Hannah exchanged a startled look. "Lily," Hannah said carefully, "do you remember your mother ever mentioning her friend's name, the one from Marfa?" Lily thought for a moment. "Hannah," she said finally, "like you. Ma said Hannah was her best friend and would help me if I ever needed it." Understanding dawned on Virgil. "Tom mentioned Sarah had a friend here, someone she trusted. It was you, Hannah. All along." Hannah looked stunned. "Sarah Bradley. Of course. I knew her as Sarah Miller before she married. We were close friends when she lived here, before she met Tom. We wrote letters for a while after she left, but eventually lost touch." Her eyes filled with tears. "If I'd known, if I'd had any idea she'd died and Lily needed help." "You would have gone to her," Virgil finished, "just like you've taken her in now." "It wasn't a coincidence," Hannah whispered. "Lily ending up here with us, it was meant to be." Virgil had never been one to believe in fate or divine intervention, but looking at Hannah and Lily together, the woman he loved and the child who had somehow become his, he couldn't deny that something greater than chance seemed to be at work. "Meant to be," he agreed, reaching out to touch Hannah's cheek. "All of it." They were married 2 weeks later in the white church at the end of Main Street. Lily stood beside them, beaming with pride in her new dress, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers that matched Hannah's larger one. The Bennetts were there, genuinely happy for them, having accepted their decision with grace and understanding. In fact, Clara had helped Hannah with her wedding dress, and John had stood as Virgil's best man. After the ceremony, the entire town turned out for a celebration in the town square. There was music and dancing, food and laughter. Virgil, who had once avoided such gatherings, found himself in the center of it all, one arm around his new wife, the other holding his new daughter. "Happy?" Hannah asked him as they watched Lily dance with John Bennett, her small feet on top of his boots. "More than I ever thought possible," Virgil admitted. "You know, I spent most of my life running. From responsibility, from attachment, from the fear of ending up bitter like my father. And all that time, I was running away from the very thing that could heal me." "What's that?" Hannah asked, though the look in her eyes suggested she already knew the answer. "Love," Virgil said simply. "The kind that stays. The kind that sees all your flaws and chooses you anyway. The kind you and Lily have shown me." Hannah leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. "It goes both ways, you know. You've shown us the same love. Lily adores you. And as for me," she smiled up at him, "well, I married you, didn't I?" "You did at that," Virgil agreed, bending to kiss her softly. "Best decision I ever made, convincing you to say yes." "As I recall," Hannah teased, "it was Lily who did most of the convincing." "Smart kid," Virgil said again, watching as Lily now danced with Clara, laughing as the older woman twirled her around. "She knew what we needed before we did." As the sun set over Marfa, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Virgil held his new family close and offered up a silent prayer of thanks. For Tom, who had entrusted him with his most precious possession, for Hannah, who had opened her heart to both him and Lily, and for Lily herself, who had somehow known that what a cowboy and a widow needed most was each other. Later that night, as Hannah tucked Lily into bed in their new home, Virgil had purchased a small house near the boarding house, which Hannah would continue to run. Lily asked for her song. "Amazing Grace?" Hannah asked, smoothing back Lily's hair. Lily nodded sleepily. "Ma's song, And your song, too. And now our song, Hannah said, beginning to hum the familiar melody. Virgil stood in the doorway, watching as his wife held his daughter and hummed the hymn that had become the soundtrack to their unlikely family. As the sweet notes filled the room, he felt a peace he'd never known before, the peace of a man who had finally stopped running and found his way home. In the years that followed, Marfa grew and changed, and so did the Keller family. Virgil became a partner in the livery stable, eventually buying it outright when Hank Wilson decided to retire. Hannah continued to run the boarding house, which became known throughout the region for its hospitality and Hannah's famous biscuits. And Lily flourished under their care, growing into a confident young woman with her mother's gentle spirit and her father's quiet strength. The Bennetts remained close friends and honorary grandparents to Lily. Clara taught her to bake and quilt, while John taught her to ride and handle horses almost as well as Virgil could. Their ranch became Lily's second home, a place of adventure and freedom that complemented the warmth and security of the Keller household. 2 years after their marriage, Hannah gave birth to a son they named Thomas Daniel in honor of Tom Bradley and Hannah's first husband. The boy inherited Virgil's restless energy and Hannah's compassionate heart, a combination that kept them both on their toes. Lily adored her little brother from the moment she first held him, appointing herself his protector and guide. Sometimes, especially in the spring when the wildflowers bloomed across the Texas hills, Virgil would feel a familiar itch, a longing for open skies and unknown horizons. When those moments came, he would saddle his horse and ride out for a day, sometimes 2. But he always returned, drawn back by the knowledge that everything that truly mattered was waiting for him in Marfa. And when he rode into town, he would often find Hannah on the porch of their home, sometimes with Thomas on her hip, sometimes alone. She never reproached him for these brief absences, understanding that they were part of who he was, the last echo of the man he had been. "Welcome home," she would say, and those 2 words contained everything: forgiveness, acceptance, love. One particular evening, returning from such a ride, Virgil found not Hannah but Lily waiting on the porch. She was 12 by then, on the cusp of young womanhood, her face losing its childish roundness, but still unmistakably the same little girl who had clung to him as they rode into Marfa all those years ago. "Pa," she greeted him as he dismounted. "Did you have a good ride?" "I did," Virgil said, coming to sit beside her on the porch steps. "Where's your ma and Thomas?" "Ma's putting Thomas to bed. He's been fussy all day. Cutting another tooth, Ma thinks." Lily looked at him with eyes that seemed to see too much. "You still get restless sometimes, don't you, Pa?" The directness of the question reminded Virgil of a similar conversation years before, when Lily had asked if he loved Hannah. "Yes," he admitted. "Sometimes. But you always come back." "Always," Virgil confirmed. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be, Lily. You know that, right?" She nodded, leaning against him. "I know. Ma knows too. She says it's just part of who you are, like her singing or me being stubborn." Virgil laughed at that. "You do have a stubborn streak, don't you?" "Wonder where you got that from?" "Ma says from you. You say from her. I think probably both." Lily was quiet for a moment, then added, I remember my first Ma and Pa sometimes. Not clear, like I remember you and Ma, but like shadows. Feelings more than pictures." "That's natural," Virgil said, putting his arm around her shoulders. "They loved you very much, Lily. Never doubt that." "I know, just like you and Ma love me." Lily looked up at him, her expression serious. "I'm glad you kept your promise. To my first Pa, I mean, about bringing me somewhere safe." "So am I," Virgil said, his throat tight with emotion. "It's the best promise I ever kept." The door opened behind them, and Hannah appeared, Thomas drowsy in her arms. "I thought I heard voices," she said, smiling at the sight of them together. "Welcome home, husband." "Good to be home, wife," Virgil replied, rising to take Thomas from her. The boy settled against his chest with a contented sigh, already half asleep. "How's my little cowboy?" Teething and cranky, Hannah said, but better now that his pa is home. The four of them stood there on the porch as twilight deepened into night, the first stars appearing in the velvet sky. A family, bound together not just by blood or marriage, but by choice, by promises kept, and love freely given. Years later, when Lily was grown with children of her own, she would tell the story of how she came to Marfa of her first parents, of the long journey with Virgil, of Hannah's comforting embrace and gentle hymn. She would tell of the cowboy and the widow who had opened their hearts to a grieving child and to each other, creating from loss and sadness a family bound by love. And sometimes in the quiet evenings, she would hum a certain hymn to her own children, a hymn about grace, about finding one's way home, a hymn that had once dried the tears of a little girl who thought she had lost everything, only to discover that life, with all its twists and turns, had led her exactly where she needed to be.